All right, everyone, welcome once again to the KoreSummit webinar series, blockchain. And I hope you liked our last session. You know, we still haven't found the kitty, but we're going to get close. Here, kitty. Well, today we're going to have another fun discussion, and I hope it's just as enjoyable as the last one. But before we get started, I first want to thank our sponsors. Without them, this would not be possible. And more importantly, not just helping us put these events together, these core summits, but the impact they're having on the private capital markets. Nuvei, a leading payment processor who is dedicated all the way from the CEO all the way down to this sector and making sure that we will have a reputable payment provider into the ecosystem. And of course, KoreChain, the first blockchain technology company that's gone through the SEC, the front door, to get their technology qualified for companies to issue security tokens, and NFTs. Okay, NFTs. Obviously, I got all caught up on the title. For most of it, did I forget again? I forgot to introduce myself because I figure you all get to know me after a while. I'm not famous or anything, but I am Oscar, and with me once again is Dr. Kiran Garimella. Shake the hand. He's there today. He's joining me on board so we can have an amazing discussion once again. And so our topic today is a really cool one. NFT, not for toddlers. And if we ever wanted to get people's attention in the last two webinars, we're definitely doing a good job this way. So we've talked about blockchain already. We've gone through what it is, and it's pretty fascinating, as we have these discussions every week, that another product is being built on top of this technology with a funky name. At first it was blockchain and it's crypto. And notice we don't talk about crypto like Bitcoin or anything like that. It's not sexy. Then we had to talk about crypto kitties, because that's more sexy and more fun, as you said, gamification. And now we're talking about NFTs. And NFTs, to me, I'm just going to give everybody a high-level overview. I see it emerged right after the last three-letter acronym opportunity came out, which was called the ICOs that exploded and so on. So we're going to get to that about NFTs, but it seems like it's an evolution, but it's one that, I remember you and I, Kiran, talking to people. In order to issue a security, it has to be a non-fungible token. And now they made that into a three-letter acronym that is so sexy without people realizing what NFTs really are. So let's talk about our NFT. Let's talk about it. Let's start right from the beginning. What is it? What is it that obviously people made it into a three-letter acronym, but it was, I think, from a blockchain perspective, they were the underlying way that blockchain was built. It was either fungible or non-fungible, and one had a value, a reason why it was valuable, and the other one wasn't. Well, let's go back to the basics. It's on you.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is actually a very, very interesting topic. And most coincidentally, it's been almost 1 decade now since the very first NFT launched back on the Bitcoin network called the colored coins. They kind of use the Bitcoin's own, very rudimentary scripting language to launch the very first NFT. It's unbelievable, right? I mean, it's been almost a decade now. And but over the years, it kept evolving. But at a very high level, an NFT simply is a digital representation of some underlying asset. It can be a painting, it can be a piece of commercial real estate, it can be an order book, it can be a poem, it can be a sports event, it can be a video, it can be any of those things. Anything of value that people see, or even not of value, doesn't matter, right? Anything that's digital out there, or any physical asset that you create a digital representation of, and it's one of a kind. So this is kind of where you alluded to the fungible tokens versus non-fungible tokens. And fungible tokens are pretty much everything is exactly the same. One share is the same as another share in the same share class, for example. Every currency note is the same as any other currency note of the same denomination. So those are what's called fungible. You can exchange them one for one, and nothing is gained or lost by that. But non-fungibles are just one of a kind. If you have one sale deed and it's digitized, it's for that one house or building, for example, or it's for one painting of that kind. You can't exchange them without losing value or gaining value. So that's the difference between those two. So it's pretty interesting how this market has evolved. So hopefully that kind of gave a sense of what an NFT really is.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we were just writing it, we weren't using the acronym, but all of a sudden the acronyms become so sexy. NFTs now
Yeah.
become this thing that people, hey, we need to build NFTs. Okay, so without actually understanding that NFT stands for non-fungible token and understanding what that really means, people are attributing it to the sexiness and the appeal that all of a sudden it's had. So let's talk about that, because let's jump right into it, because obviously everybody knows the most common way uses of
Yep.
NFT today. We're seeing it in art, music, and so on. So let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about a little bit about that impact that it had there, and then we're going to dive into. Obviously, we're in the private capital markets. So why are NFTs and private capital markets having a collision, or well, not having a collision? They had a collision, and it went
Yeah.
just like ICOs. Please let us
Yeah.
know.
I think it's an important distinction. It's a great question. A lot of people get confused by that, and they say, why are these things taking off like gangbusters? It's so if you look at the whole blockchain evolution, it actually started with cryptocurrencies, and every one unit of currency, cryptocurrency, or even fiat is the same as anything else, right? So cryptocurrencies, and then they kind of morphed into ICOs and STOs and security tokens and securities and digital and that kind of stuff. But all of those things are fungible, meaning that every one unit of this is the same as any other unit. So there was not much distinction until somebody said, no, wait a minute, why can't I use the same technology to create something, a token, but it only stands for one of a kind, and that one of a kind has its own value. So when you look at that, there are two important things that people think about, and that is, you know, I have a one of a kind asset, and I want to represent that, and then so I want to put it out there. Why do I want to put it out there? Well, it is to prove ownership. So land is a great example. Real estate is a great example. Ownership of a single, let's say, a painting, and you can prove that it's yours. That's a great example. But there's a second aspect to that, and that's kind of where NFTs really took off. And it all has to do with this following fact: when you own the one of its kind, whatever asset it is, like a baseball card, over time it gets value because it's something is unrepeatable. There's a historical value to this one. People collect antiques. Why? Because it's one of a kind, right? It's somebody wrote a letter, Jefferson's letter, or the Constitution, the first page, the signed page. All of these are examples of one of a kind. But as time goes by, they gain more and more and more value simply because of the historical value. Or sometimes what happens is, you take a baseball card for one person and one player, and well, nothing happens for some time, but then suddenly the player then shoots up in rankings or something like that, and now that whole business, that baseball card gains value. Or this happens in painting and art all the time. So painters paint, and everything has a value, but the moment the painter passes away, then suddenly the value goes up because the painter can't reproduce or do anything similar. So there's a value when the supply is cut off, right? And now it becomes a trading scenario. The value is now increasing for the particular asset, a non-fungible token, and now it can be traded. And that's been one of the most significant sparks that launched the whole NFT movement.
The thing about the NFT movement that I saw, that I remember one particular individual, he used to hunt me, call me at nighttime, which was my precious time with my children. I won't mention his name, but I'll just say his name is PD. And he would call me every Friday or even during the week at night, and he would ask me, "But Oscar, I just saw this NFT. How could this be a security?" And I always broke it down to the basic. I go, I love NFTs. And he goes, "Okay, so you love them." I go, "I do. I have nothing against them. I think what a phenomenal way of doing this, putting this into a digital format." But I said, in my world, in the world of securities, this is when the collision occurs. And I must have provided the example 1,000 times, but just for him today, I'll do it one more time, because every once in a while he asks me, "What about this one?" It doesn't really matter what it is. So here's the basic example of an NFT. As you indicated, if you NFT this iPhone today, you make an NFT of this, and you give it to someone, and you sell it to them for $1, that one NFT. You don't need securities regular. Keep doing that. That's been going on for years. You buy a car,
Yes.
you sell a car, great. And here's another one. If I take this NFT and I make more copies of the NFT and I sell it, each NFT, to one person, again, it's not a security. And people go, "Okay, so what's the big issue?" And that's true. What is the big issue? What is it that people are getting themselves into trouble with? Where does the securities law element kick in with the NFT? And this is when the collision occurred. When you took this phone and you made it into an NFT and you allowed more than one person to own it. As soon as that occurred, that no longer became a NFT to one owner to one. It became an investment.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And this is the part, and people go, "But that's what makes an NFT so great, is that you can have a piece of the pie." And I go, "Yes, it is." Nobody said that regulators do not allow the ability to have NFTs and sell it to investors and to be able to buy them, trade them, and all that, fully compliant. Nobody said that. Obviously, you and I, we went through this with KoreChain
Yep.
when we went through the front door of the SEC. We said exactly that. But if you don't do it compliantly and you don't follow the rules, having FINRA book of dealers, filing your Form 1A or Form C, whatever, depending what regulation you're using, you don't have an SEC transfer agent, all these different things, secondary ATS, then so people go, so it can be done. But the basic rule, and I swear, people would say, "Okay, but what if it was a car, a pen?" It didn't really matter. The basic rule is just 1, 2, 3. One on one, no problemo, never be a security. And you can NFT anything, but I'm going to give people a warning to the NFT. Then the second one is if you make multiple copies. If anybody's ever owned a painting, you know how it says 1 of 500? That's exactly what it
Exactly.
is, 1 of 500. And then, of course, if you take that one single painting and you break it into chunks, it becomes a security. What companies like Curation are doing now with, with Regulation A. So that's what I've seen. That's where the whole concept of NFTs, phenomenal, without a doubt, phenomenal, groundbreaking, from the perspective that it allows an artist to have control of their art and be able to digitize it and offer it to a grand audience. The problem is that the first entry to it was it. People weren't just going there to own one, like we go to a store and buy a card or
Yep.
a little thing that, memento, one item. Because otherwise, this is the example that I give to everybody, is that imagine if everybody went to a store and everybody bought the same pair of pants. Or the same pair. So they're not regulated because they're not selling it to multiple people. Now, if you
This
all
is
want to share, but it's all sharing one pant at a time. I mean,
this is beginning to sound like a sisterhood of the traveling pants.
okay, but I'm kind of being somewhat ridiculous with it, because
Yeah.
I do recall the conversations that PD and we used to have, and And I can understand how people would struggle with it because they don't see the difference. And no matter how simple you would describe the scenario over and over again,
Yeah,
but it doesn't go away
yeah,
from the fact that NFT is a fantastic way of using blockchain technology to put something of value in a digital form, an immutable form, that you'll be able to either have it as a one-time ownership or duplicate
yeah,
ownership or own a fractional ownership of an NFT. But as soon as you go to the fractional ownership in NFT, we're moving into the security side. But we're going to go there. But I want to talk about something really important, um, and and that was that you and I have read enough articles, and I'm sure people have also read this. Is that there, the fact that I put this iPhone on NFT, and I'm saying it's an iPhone 18 and it's an NFT, and you're like, oh wow, iPhone 18 NFT, I got one. I'm one of the first. The one basic question the other end of the table did not ask as well: is this real iPhone? It, it,
yes,
we immediately jumped. All we heard NFT Rolex watch, so we assumed
yeah,
it was Rolex watch,
yeah,
and and this is the part that people need to understand. We're taking a real world asset, a painting, art, music, a T-shirt, anything, whatever it is, and we're moving it into a digital world. And the important thing that you all need to understand about this when you're looking at NFTs, because they're still out there: who is the one moving it, and who is the
yeah,
one telling you that it's actually what it is.
yes,
And this was a major discovery. Like, so if Nike, because companies like Nike are using it, I know the New York Giants, the owner of the football, baseball, are using it in their stadiums, which I'll give you some examples. But let's talk a little bit about that. That we're still humanly flawed in this element that people have overlooked.
yeah, yeah. And I want to answer that particular, or at least discuss that particular aspect of that. But I also want to step back for one just second, because there is one important or interesting analogy and example that I give. Because people who come new into this blockchain space or NFT space, they are a little bit baffled by what blockchain is and what exactly is the difference, right? So I want to go back to that very simple example that I have, which is trading baseball cards. So 30 or 40 years ago, when you were a kid and you wanted to buy a Mickey Mantle baseball card from one of your friends, and the friend says, "Oh, it's going to cost you like $10." Well, $10 is a lot of money in those days, right? And you don't have it. So what do? Well, you round up, 10 friends and say, "Guys, I'm going to sell you $1 worth of stuff. Share this one. Can you give me $1?" And then later, when this becomes really expensive, we can all sell this stuff and we'll all be happy, right? So you kind of, that. So basically, what you've done is you kind of securitized a baseball card and collected money from your friends, which is perfectly fine. And Oscar, like you said, no regulator needs to be involved in it, right? But now you also reach out to your cousin who is, 1,000 miles away from you, and you give him a phone call and say, "Hey, hey, buddy, this is what we want to do. Do you want to chip in?" And the guy says, "I didn't even see the card. What do you do?" Now, when you digitize it, you can now send it over the internet. Let's assume there was internet, right? So now you can put it up on site and say, "Well, there it is. That's mine." And your cousin, it doesn't really trust you and says, "How do I know that's real?" Which is the point that you just brought up. And of course, now you now have to go to the local dealer or a collector or somebody of solid repute and have them look at it and say, "Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely real." And I will write a note saying it is real. Now you attach that note, it's signed to the card as if the whole thing is one big, package. You've basically authenticated that from a third party, and now you put it up there, and now it becomes a solid. Okay, now your cousin can see this, right? Somewhere far away, because it's not digitized. It doesn't have to be a physical asset. You don't have to send it to him. He doesn't have to come and all this expense. And you can now prove that it's real. Now comes the third part where there's a security aspect to this one. Instead of just calling up your friends and saying, "Hey, buy a share for $1 at 1/10 of a share," now you can advertise it general public and you say, "This is important. I think Mickey Mantle is going to be the greatest, player in the planet. and this is going to be worth like thousands of dollars later. Now we have made an investment promise. And that's when the regulators, then it becomes a real security that draws the attention of the regulatory mechanisms. But in a big solid sense, I mean, you're right, Oscar. I mean, how do you know it's real? That's kind of where the authenticity of something and the supporting documentation and proofs are immutably linked to the chain. And that's the reason why, if you look at blockchain, it's all very decentralized. So the asset doesn't have to move around, but the proof of ownership is irrefutable. It's immutable, especially when you tie in the authentication portion of it, right?
Well, you have to. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is a part I think everybody overlooked in the early days of NFTs
Yeah.
completely. They jumped in, but when you have companies like Nike, or you have the New York Giants,
Yeah.
or the Yankees providing this, the authentication is they're the owners of the product. So if Nike is saying this was the very first shoe we ever created, and this is the NFT for it, this is it, right? They are the source of what better source than themselves. But whenever there's another party involved, this was the part that people overlooked, and then they found out that they had bogus things. They were buying music that didn't exist, or didn't was an ownership, or artwork and stuff like that. So it can be very dangerous because you're not touching the asset in this case. You're removed from it. So you do need to do your homework and understand it. Is it a great use of the product of blockchain technology? Yes, the answer is yes. You can. It's a fantastic use of it. Why? Because it shows you the creativity that we have now that we did not have before. Art curation is perfect example. We're going to be having them in the month of March in one of our panels here, and we're going to be talking about fractionalizing art. People are investing in art. And they are. I mean, look, everybody's got something they like, and they're going to offer an NFT of that piece of art. Imagine, and it's going to be a limited quantity. So they're going to have, 500, 1,000 of these NFTs. These are rare little pieces of history that you have because they're authenticating the art, they're holding the art, they're working with the artists themselves in some cases. That becomes extremely powerful as the digital age evolves, correct? And more importantly, you can, once you've created in this format. I mean, so one question I was asked once, and it goes, okay, Oscar, if I have an NFT of this phone, and I do want to make it into a security, I want to go to that step. Can I do it? And I go, fantastic. Now you're learning what Wall Street's always been doing, taking a piece of real estate and adding another product, a CBD and a DVD and EAE.
Yeah.
I'm sure you all watched the movie. This is the same example. Nothing is stopping you from taking this NFT you have here, as Kiran said it, and you had to validate it all the way through to then create another NFT where you're going to fractionalize that ownership, get the investment you put in and further investment and seeing the value. I mean, this is an exciting journey of how to bring these two distinctive ways of doing things that people had not realized before.
And this is the reason, why, I mean, the reason this is so exciting really is it is democratizing something that was available only to, a very small minority of people. I mean, if you take a look at very expensive art, the Vermeers, the Mona Lisas, the Cezannes, and things like that, or if you looked at very expensive historical antiques, right? If you look at that, and very few people could actually afford that. But more importantly, if you ever wanted to securitize something like that, you have to go through the entire regulatory Wall Street bureaucracy and process to do that. And it was not really easy for people to do. And the only other thing preventing the common Main Street person to do something like this was lack of technology. I mean, how would you do all of this if you didn't actually have the infrastructure to do it correctly? Because now it becomes decentralized. You're not selling and trading with somebody you don't know. So what is the underlying infrastructure that assures provenance, authenticity, and then also takes on the counterparty risk when you're trading this stuff, right? That's where blockchain came in. And with the advent of blockchain, that's the reason why. I mean, you look at, the very first NFT, the colored coins that went on in 2014, and there were others too. I mean, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, sold his very first tweet for approximately like 3 million, 2.9 million back, a couple of years ago, 2021, I think. And then there was a digital artist, Beeple, who sold his art for $69 million at Christie's, right? And by the way, the very first real estate NFT transaction that ever took place, it happened, just in my neighborhood in Gulfport, Florida. They sold a 5-bedroom, 4-bath, 2164 SFT, something like that, for 715,000. So they actually listed it at 630. By the time the NFT auction finished, it gained $85,000 in value. And the very first happened here. I almost missed going to that one because it's right down in our neighborhood. But you think about all of this, the technology is bringing that the whole concept of NFT down to securitizing a digital asset. That concept is now coming down to the mainstream America. And then the Jobs Act and regulation is something that makes it much more enabling to get this investment from so many other people. I'd love to hear your views on what is the impact of the regulatory, the Jobs Act, for example, in facilitating some of this? Because I mean, you have been tracking this compliance for decades, pretty much. You know the history much better than anybody else.
When they first came out, I fell in love with them. I truly did. And if there was one product of the blockchain that came out that I saw the biggest impact that it could open it up to everyone were NFTs. And I am saddened a bit personally that what occurred, I mean, 98% of them have blown up and so on. But all of that could have been prevented. And again, this is the same thing we said with ICOs. It could have been prevented. And it's not like they didn't know, but again, everybody got caught up in you got to get in on this because this thing is going to go from $5 to $100 or $1,000, and so it was, from a regulation point of view, I immediately saw it. I go, fantastic! Here is a way. Like you and I, we were discussing on our last session, how do we bring the world of CryptoKitties and securities regulate? We believe we have a model. We're going to be working hopefully with a Polygon Association, Foundation to bring that to life.
Yep.
So the important thing is here, where this NFT could have be so explosive. So today, can private companies who are raising capital under Regulation CF, Regulation A+, use NFTs? The answer is 100% amicably yes, yes, yes. And they go, okay, so I can do it. Yes, but now you need to pay attention to the technology you're using, because now it's all about securities law. So now, can you have the NFT in a public chain and still some control element with the private world? The answer is yes. Nobody's ever saying no. It's just the answer is yes, but there are going to be constraints that have to be created in order to make sure that this doesn't violate any of the securities element. And I firmly believe that NFTs could be revived. I think the winter or the thunderstorm is done. I think the fact that companies like Adidas, Nike, New York Giants, and many others are using it, it just shows you how powerful this technology can have on an ownership. You go to the store, you buy something. Not only, I don't know if any of you have kids, but when they buy a hat, they go, no, don't remove the tag. And I go, okay, I won't. Why? Look, see that? It's got an authentication sticker with a serial number. See? And if that becomes the NFT for them, that's a very powerful element of their ownership. They didn't buy it because they're going to go out and sell it for $100 tomorrow, but it's their pride of ownership. And I think that's the person we need to bring back to you in the NFTs. I think that the
Yeah.
first batch of people came in, oh, buy it, sell it, buy for
Yeah.
$1, get it for 100. Those aren't those are the people that took advantage of the element, and people allowed it. I truly believe that a vast majority of people truly loved the piece of art. They truly loved what they saw, and they wanted to be part of that, and they were robbed that. So but the Jobs Act is there. The Jobs Act can facilitate it. It can be done in compliantly, and like I said, curation is going to be doing it for art. We have another client called Environment is doing it for carbon credits. So I mean, I
Yes.
guess that's my next question to you. What are the different types of NFTs that people can look at?
It's a great question, because not all NFTs are the same. It's like cats, right? There are different breeds of cats. There's no standard classification, Oscar, unfortunately. But I like to think. I mean, I think you and I have had this conversation where we said there are three types of NFTs at a very, very broad level, right? So an NFT can stand for the entire asset, all in one. It's one big unit, and it cannot be subdivided. The other NFT is, if you take one piece of whatever the underlying asset is. I always like to think of painting because it's easy to understand. So there's a Mona Lisa painting worth, I don't know, several $100 million, right? And if you create one NFT for that Mona Lisa, it's yours. Well, let's assume it's on the public market. It's not in some museum somewhere. So you own the entire piece all by yourself, and that one NFT stands for the whole thing. That's one type. The second type is, it's too expensive one person to own it, and maybe it makes more sense for maybe 100 people to own it, right? But then everybody says, okay, let's subdivide this entire painting into pieces, exactly as if you would take a paper painting and then cut it up into and designate and say, oh, you want to own the right eye of Mona Lisa, and I want to own the smile of Mona Lisa, which is probably more expensive than the eye of Mona Lisa, right? Because the smile is a famous one. So now it is a designated portion of that asset, and that's the second kind. And the third kind is, you sort of subdivide the entire art into 100 pieces, but it's not like you own one piece of this. It's almost like shares. So if you have shares in IBM, you cannot say that my 100 units of IBM is really representing the CEO's desk. You can't walk in there and say, hey, this is my shares, I'm going to take my desk and go away with it. You just can't do that, right? So it's all commingled into one. And so that, I think of that as a third kind. But that's a very fundamental way of looking at the types of NFTs. But besides that, there are many other ways of classifying them. You can have single edition NFTs, you can have fractional NFTs, you can have interactive NFTs that represent interactive things like the change in the weather, the outcome of a sports event, for example, or the event of a political outcome, something happening economically somewhere. You can have utility NFTs that talk about, that represent membership and rights in the ecosystem for your community, access to exclusive content, etc. Or you can have layered NFTs. So I have an NFT that represents a game, but then the first layer is a skin of the game. The second layer is all the weapons that the characters use. The third is a performance of the game, etc. And in our world of capital markets, this could represent bundled investment products, right? You have one investment product that's bundled in different ways, right? And so that could be a layered NFT. We also have something called the wrapped NFT. So if you take one NFT and you wrap it for use in different blockchains, that's one thing. And what you just said, Oscar, is the coexistence of an NFT with with securities is a classic example, I think, of having a wrapped NFT. I mean, this is kind of where we look at an NFT and wrap it with a securities regulation on top of that and kind of make it really securities. So what happens is that when that security needs to be traded, the trade can be initiated on the public chain, but needs to be validated and approved in a different mechanism on a different permission chain, for example, where broker dealers, transfer agents, and others get involved and they certify and okay that. Only then the trade is said to be complete and settled. So you kind of look at NFTs of various types like this.
No, it's if we were Wall Street guys, that's what they do with product. I mean, hopefully everybody's had a chance to watch the movies like The Margin Call or Big Short, and
Yes,
there's one particular one that I really like a lot is, he's taking this game, the blocks and wooden blocks, right, putting them together, and it started with one asset, one house, but if you put all the houses together, they created another product, and then when they created that,
exactly.
they run them up again and created another product, but it was only one house.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons they do that is to carve out various levels of risk. So your risk profiles, right? Some investors like a low risk, then somebody else likes a higher risk. So now you can tweak the NFT in and wrap it in different ways.
correct. I think that's the part that I think that it's going to be pretty exciting. I believe now more and more companies are, because they're looking at it, and as you said, we can wrap things together, and then
Hmm.
if there's somebody out there listening to this, I'm going, okay, wait a minute. So if if there's all these Reg A deals, and I buy shares in all these Reg A deals, which are free trading, and I tokenize that and sell it, I could do that. The answer is yes. I mean, this we we're finally being given the regulation to be able to utilize that. So I'm going to cover that again for everybody. So imagine 100, Reg A offerings that you bought. I don't know, let's say 10,000 in each one. You now have a big pot with X number of dollars, and all of these are free trading securities, so you're not violating anything, because if you have to liquidate, you have the means of doing so, no different than anyone else. And now what you can do, you can wrap that up, you can make it into a token or an NFT, and then you can your investment portfolio is your NFT, and now you fractionalize that to everybody else. I think that's fantastic. I mean, this is
Oh,
where I think this is where, and if it goes beyond just the art element. The art element is so perfect because it ties in that visual element or music. It ties in the the
yes.
the element of listening to something you enjoy. At the same time, you have an ownership to it. But when you start looking at it from financial products, we're evolving now, creating asset class products that didn't exist a few years ago. This was not possible. Just so everybody's here, this was not possible. We did not have regulations until the Jobs Act introduced to allow this. So imagine how powerful this is, where you have this ownership, and you NFT it again and resell it, and then there'll be others, like a layer after a layer and layer. I'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, I just think it's so exciting to see the evolution of something that started a little bit maliciously, of course, but
Mhm.
it's now evolved to being fully compliant, and to be something that where people can enjoy in one part, as well they can make money on it.
Absolutely. And for people listening to this one, and many people that I talk to, when we have these exciting conversations on the potential and the possibilities of NFTs and the blockchain in the securities markets in general, people have this impression that it's all sci-fi. It'll happen sometime in the future. And I think it's important to understand that we already have that infrastructure already. I mean, look, Oscar, you and I, we have been, with our teams looking at this for what, like 3 years now, right? And we have, made significant progress on in the infrastructure to support all of this. And one of the most exciting things, and the capabilities of the blockchain in making programmable tokens, and whether you call them on the fungible side or on the non-fungible side, you can create non-fungible programmable tokens that either increase in value or they trigger certain events when things happen. So I'll boil it down for our security space, because on the non-security space, people always think about what can happen on that side, right? Artist passes away, an event happens, a sports event happens, the weather changes, and you can have all this stuff. But on the security side, just think about royalties that kick in, the
Yeah.
order book increases, convertible bonds are converted under certain conditions, corporate actions happen, When corporate actions happen, all the options become cashable, for example, right? And auto dividend of payments by automatically make dividend payments if profit reaches a certain level. All of these things have the securities component, but they can actually interact with the NFT and then make the NFT more valuable through the programmability of this one. So this whole thing about taking securities and then connecting them with NFTs, which can be on the public chain, but everything is protected with a wrapped programmable layer on top of this. This has to be one of the most exciting things that we will see. We'll see more traction on this one as we go along, Oscar. So, I mean, that's the really exciting part for me.
It is. I think look, as remember when we had Louis Cohen on one of our panels, and we're going to need to bring him back on again, because you need a lawyer like Louis who understands both sides of the fence, has a high respect for the securities law, and has a full understanding that, the two worlds need to coexist together. Each one has great value, and NFTs in the public chain, they're great. I get it. And you can program a lot of the aspects that will make a life easier. What this doesn't mean, though, and this is the important part, is that it's not going to fade away. It's not going to phase away the people that are required to be part of that transaction. And this is the part that I always try to tell people, that it's really important to understand that we're not trying to say that, hey, because it's going to be programmed, so I'll give you some examples of this where, in 2018 or 2017, around there, I don't even remember the year, but you and I headed off to New York, and the big announcement was that Ethereum had launched, the first protocol for transfer agent. And I'm like, bravo, great. I remember somebody from Morgan Stanley being at the event, and I'm looking at them, I'm going, am I missing something? And she goes, no, I mean, look what they've done. I go, no, I get it, but did somebody change the SEC rules? Well, what do you mean? Well, as far as I checked, last time I checked, you need to be an entity to be a transfer agent. So has anybody
Exactly.
So you put the question up there and go, oh, no, this is going to bypass the regular. They're just going to embrace it. Okay. I remember that conversation in the 2016 when they used to say, oh, yeah, regulators are going to get on board with ICOs because that's the way to go. That's what people want. No, that's not what people want. People want the ability to invest. They want the ability to have access to different products. We're all in agreement there, but they also want to be protected, and they don't want to be ripped off. And the reality is that, and regrettably, the first view of everything was nothing more than scams. And we're certainly not trying to advocate that everybody was doing it, but unfortunately, 98, 99% of everything that occurred in that world. And I know some people made a lot of money in it. Okay, fine. But going forward,
and sorry, I just want to share a thought. So they thought the regulators would embrace all this really fancy stuff that anybody can do the transfer and serve as a transfer agent. The regulators certainly embrace that. They embrace them in prison. Basically, they give them a jumpsuit and embrace them.
Well, and that was just it. I kept telling them all the time that
exactly.
I don't think the regulars have any issue. Somebody's got to bring it to them, and as soon as they do, they start realizing, wow, you got to follow all this. Yeah, you need to have book of records because you're going to be audited every 4 years or every year. You're going to be audited. Where you keeping? How you tracking it? How do you know where there can't be two sets of records? And
exactly.
And people go, well, then we got to get rid of that. Okay, I have no problem with that argument whatsoever. Who's going to take the first step? And I remember that in 2016, and look at it as we're now in 2024. In 2024, 8 years later, they've raised hundreds, if not billions of dollars. And the only people that are talking to the SEC or having any kind of fighting are the crypto guys, the commodities, the exchange, which is great. But what people don't realize, there are two sides to the SEC. And we're only going to talk about the SEC because we're not talking about other jurisdictions. That wouldn't be fair. So number one, there is a commodity side and there is a security side, and they're regulated totally different.
Differently.
Yes,
Totally
you need
different.
there's auditors, broker dealers, and brokers and all that, but they have different functions. And I think this is the confusion sometimes people get into is that, oh, no, Coinbase, they're not fighting for this. That's not what Coinbase is fighting the SEC for
Yeah.
right now. They're fighting them for something else. So if you want to fight it, you want to have a fight with them on a war, then you need to figure out a different strategy on how you're going to approach this. But this is, it is exciting because, through the evolution of our discussions we've been having and talking about using blockchain, everybody, when we spoke to Jim Dow, the CEO and founder of North Capital, we spoke to Lewis, and we spoke to Sarah as well from North Capital. There was no doubt in people's mind that blockchain, it can be so impactful for the private capital markets. And we obviously, that's what you and I are doing this, is to bring awareness to everyone that as much as there is that on the other side, there is a right way to do this. And it's not as painful as everybody makes it sound to be. It's not. You just need to know and work with people like anything else. I mean, look, if you bought a BMW, obviously you're not going to take it to the Honda dealership or someone who's got a little garage in the back of his house to fix your car.
Honest Pete's garage.
Right, honesty garage. Yeah, I mean, so this is the part that I'm puzzled by sometimes, where people they keep saying it's so hard. It's not. It's only hard right now because the topic itself, you're new to it. But once you get on board with it, and this is the arena you're going to play, you're going to figure out that it's not that simple. Look, we built this company, you and I and Jason,
Yeah.
for the years. We took it from 8 people. I think we're now 60 plus and growing. And one thing that we have now proven to the world, you can teach anyone everything. The securities regulators in the United States have made it so simple to learn and use their regulations. And there is a structure to it. There is a structure. And that's so like every country in the world, and people go, every country is different. They're not. They're all the same. They all have the same structure. It's just a little nuance that you get caught in there. So I think it's an exciting journey. I know we can talk forever on NFTs, and I'm excited because I want to see more of it. I want the topic to come back in, and I want the word to be there, a regulated NFT. That just, imagine the confidence level an investor's going to have.
So one thing I do want to say though, this whole mindset of fighting the SEC is wrong. That is not how people need to approach it. People need to say, what is the main concern of the SEC and the FINRA, right? Or any regulatory body? It's there for a reason. It's there because, the government or whoever is in, they want to protect. They want to protect and make sure there are no scams, crooks, and crime being done, human trafficking, and that kind of crazy stuff happening. And it's all about protection. So that common ground cannot vanish. So even on the public chains, I mean, there are people say, I don't want Uncle Sam to know what I'm doing. Well, okay, fine, then go do what you want. But the moment scandals happen, you lose your money. Don't go crying, running to Uncle Sam and say, help me out. Well, you didn't want Uncle Sam in the first place. Now, why are you saying the same thing? You want protection. If you want protection, SEC wants protection. You both have a common ground. So here, it is not a fighting scenario. It's a collaboration scenario. How can you make this more efficient and compliant with regulation? And the efficiency part, I agree. Many regulations are very onerous. They can be bureaucratically cumbersome, get it. But that's exactly why the technology is there to make it much more fluid. And Oscar, you said something which is really important that people don't ignore or not pay attention to. All the jurisdictions, regulations all over the planet, you said they're all pretty similar. And the analogy that I would like to offer is like cars, right? All cars have the 4 wheels and they have the engine, transmission, seats. They're all the same concept, to take one person from point A to point B at a high speed safely, right? That never goes away. Now, the colors will be different, the models will be different. We get that, right? Different countries have different models. We know that. But at the end of the day, they are the same car. And this is exactly like that. NFTs and securities and the regulations, they're all the same, but the nuances can be a little bit different. The procedures can be a little bit different.
It is, and look. We've opened up the can of not the can of worms. That's probably the wrong expression. We've opened it up. We're
A
letting everybody.
Cambrian explosion.
Yes, we're letting everybody know here right now, this very
Yeah.
second, that guess what? We have an opportunity to bring the two worlds together. You've been hearing it all along.
Oh yeah.
We're not anti anything. What we are anti is investors being robbed blindly for things that are not real. This is how it gets real really quickly. And this is important for companies listening in. There is a way to do it. The answer is yes. Um, and we're going to walk you through it. We're going to show you there's the lawyers, the auditor, everybody that you needed to make sure it's regulated. And then it can be something you deploy to your entire community and audience and make it exciting, because NFTs are a phenomenal way of using blockchain technology. Like CryptoKitties make it a gamification, and this gives that element that people want. They want to hang something on their wall, hang it somewhere to show that they have it. So it's pretty exciting. So thanks again, Kiran. I still haven't found the kitty yet. I'm still looking. Okay. So
Well, that's okay. We'll securitize the kitty.
yes. So the thing that I'm looking forward to is that, I know this is sparking people's mind. I mean, I look at environment with the carbon credits. I mean, it's already. I've seen carbon credits and NFTs in other areas, and they go up and immediately gone down, shut down, and everything. Here's an example of a company that's going to do it fully compliantly using Regulation A plus, like duration with Regulation A plus, and we're going to see more of that. We're going to see companies in cars, real estate. I
Yep.
truly look. I believe we need to fundamentally change the model, and I agree with everybody in blockchain and DeFi and all that when they say, the banks control everything. Okay, great. Now we need to change that model. How do we change it? Okay, well, here's a house for $2.7 million, and what I want to do is raise capital from the crowd, and I'm going to offer them a percentage and all that. And can it be done? So imagine having that residual income for what the banks have been doing for years. Someone told me once that the concept of ownership of a home was never the concept of the person. It was a concept invented by the banks in order for you to borrow money. Try to remember that every single day when you think of what blockchain is doing in the industry. We're trying to transform everything. So when someone approaches the idea from, hey, I want to help people get ownership to a home without going through their bank loan, and how do you go about it? Well, in this case, you would need to use regulation CF. People could have a stake in the home that you're offering. You're offering a dividend. Where's that dividend coming? Your mortgage payment. Oh my God,
Yes.
I never even thought of that. Exactly. You didn't even think of that. That's how funky it is, right? I mean,
Yep.
you got to make the payment, and every month or every quarter or every annual, people are getting a payment. And imagine they're making a payment until you finish paying off the home. You know
I
what?
know
It just
exactly.
gave me the most amazing idea that I didn't think. I'm sorry. I people, we're gonna go off a little bit because people have been coming to you and I for such a long time, and they always say, "Oh, you guys." It's always like it's not possible. It's not possible. It is possible if we do it
Yes.
compliantly, and so those things are important. And so the thing that, as I'm now explaining to people to this, it's the very thing that I wanted to do. So here's what I can do. I can go and create a legal entity in the United States. I'm going to call it the OAJ Homestead. The OAJ Homestead is going to raise, $3 million, and it's going to offer a dividend to everyone because it's going to use its capital 100% to acquire this asset. And their individuals are going to get a quarterly or semi-annual payment, depending on how many holders there are. So that way it's substantial. So not only are they benefiting from getting the dividend, they're going to
Yep.
also benefit when the home gets resold again.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
You know what you just said, Oscar, and I'm going to say this.
Karan,
I know, right? I know. I mean, look, I mean, in our one-on-one chats, but also in seminars like this, and we've been on stage together on panel sessions, you know, we just simply come up with this stuff. And there's this one thing I want to say in sort of my closing comment on this, because we're running out of time, is approximately 540 million years ago, something strange happened on the planet Earth. All of a sudden, we saw this explosion of really weird animals. Evolutionary, explosion happened. It's called the Cambrian explosion, and there are some animals there that people didn't know what it was all about. Right? There's an animal. In fact, they called it. They in fact named it hallucigenia, which had legs on its top and legs on its bottom, and said, "What is going on with this? We have no idea why it is." But the planet Earth went through a fantastic innovation and exploration stage in biology. So that was a biological big bang, so to speak, right? That's a Cambrian explosion. I think, Oscar, I'm reminded of that because this decade, 2024 starting, you and I, because of the conversations we have been in, and then this bulbs go off with this innovation, we are in this Cambrian explosion of NFTs, but in the private securities markets, and it's absolutely mind-boggling what we can do with it. I just wanted to offer that as a analogy, which is why we're so excited about it.
It's so, I'm like right now as you're talking, I can't believe I never thought of this. And I remember someone having the idea, and at the time it just was not possible, and
Or not framed correctly. Yeah.
not doing it correctly. But now I think about it. I mean, why can't we all be a bank? I mean, seriously, why
Absolutely.
can't we all be a bank? We give our money to the banks. They use that money. They give you 1%, and they're charging on the other side. They're charging 7%. So they're
There we
making
go.
6% on the money. And you go, but that's the profit. Yeah, not to you, to the investors who own the bank. Do you own the bank? You do not own the bank. My brain right now is just exploding. CryptoKitties got me going from one end to help companies. This now with this discussion here, I've been looking at this totally different. You and I are going to have another discussion. We're going to get a hold of Marty Tate, Lewis Cohen. I have an
Absolutely.
Hey, we're breaking ground, right? We have a big announcement for everybody regarding KoreChain. Thank you for coming to our webinar series. Guillermo is going to send you a copy of the link. I do apologize for those who didn't get an invite today. We had a little technical glitch, which we will fix, and that was Guillermo hitting the send button. But we will make sure that doesn't happen ever again. So I sincerely apologize for that. But we will have an announcement out to you very quickly where you will be invited to come in one of our websites. You've been following us and seeing and how you can be part of this movement that we're enjoying right now. So thank you again, everyone. Until next week. I can't even imagine what I don't even know, but looking forward to it. And again, if you have any questions, send out questions to us, topic ideas that you want us to discuss, to bring to light, that are going to help you in your journey, understanding blockchain and all these topics that everybody's talking about. Kiran, thank you again, and we'll be talking to everyone soon.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.